friends, unfortunately February was such a meh kind of reading month, very mediocre, a lot of 2 and 3 star reads, but I did have 2 5-star reads, which kind of saved the month, thank goodness, and I can't wait to tell you about those because you have to pick them up immediately if you haven't already read them. So I can't wait to tell you about those 2, but unfortunately the other 5-ish books that I read were very, very mediocre. I'll tell you about those as well in case you're thinking about picking it up. You might want to take some caution and maybe avoid them, or, you know, not go into them with such high hopes. But hey ho, you know, you can only go up from here. I'm hoping March will be a better reading month, but let's get into the wrap up for February. The first book I read in February was called Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is about a girl named Hannah who moves back to LA after quite a few years, and she's at a party one night where they're celebrating her return to the city, and at the end of the night she can either go home with her roommate Gabby or her old high school flame named Ethan. And the book from there kind of is told in 2 parallel universes. One is if she went home with Gabby, and the other is if she went home with Ethan. And the book really toys with the idea of kind of destiny, and if we have a choice in our destiny or if we have free will and all of that. So from the premise of the book, I was really excited because I thought it was going to explore the concept of destiny in a really cool, kind of interesting way, the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid usually does. But I'm not going to lie, this book fell so flat for me. It was so meh. It's like she took a really great dynamic topic and something that could have been so interesting and diluted it so much. For most of the book, I found it to be very slow and it just kind of drug on, and I'm just going to mention this because it drove me bananas, but I have to say this. It was like oddly obsessed with cinnamon rolls, this book. I tell you, like, the character loves cinnamon rolls. Great, who doesn't? Everybody loves cinnamon rolls. But every other sentence was about cinnamon rolls, and I just couldn't get past that to think about anything else the book was trying to offer. And it was like, at first really endearing, but from there it just kept going on and on about these cinnamon rolls. I could have made a drinking game with myself about them. Every time she said it, I should have had a shot or something. So after a while, I was just like, girl, you know, don't even worry about these guys and your dilemmas that you have going on, because you need to drop everything and go get your A1C checked, because your blood sugar levels might not be all right, and that should be a priority before we even try to figure out what's going on with these guys. So yeah, the cinnamon roll thing went to left. I think the whole topic of destiny wasn't done well. She didn't really give it enough depth like I usually find with her books, and so that was really disappointing. So this one got a 3-star from me, unfortunately, maybe even a 2.5 if I'm being super honest. And you know, I'm gonna give that 1/2 star because of the cinnamon rolls themselves. So anyways, yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. I love all her other books, but this one fell very flat. The next 2 books I read were actually on my Kindle. I was like, let me just take a break and change up my media type so that maybe it can inspire some reading and get me through some books. And so I picked up Forever After All. This is by Katharina Mora. Katharina Mora last month was one of my favorite authors. I had just discovered her. I'll put my wrap up here for January. She had some great books that I discovered initially, but then I think as I'm reading more and more of her books, I'm finding that they're very repetitive. The characters are written exactly the same way. All the love scenes are written exactly the same way. The nicknames, everything is like copy paste, and I'm not liking that. So this book is about Elena and Alex, and I'm not even quite sure what the plot was about. It's like, I think Elena was in trouble and needed to get some money. Her family doesn't help her, so she goes to a gentleman's club, I think hoping to get a job there as a last resort. But Alex is an old family friend, and he steps in to help her and proposes a marriage of convenience. And it follows a very similar pattern to all of her other books. I just find that they're getting very, very repetitive, and I'm not sure that she's gonna stay on the top of my favorites authors list. I initially thought like, wow, anything she writes I'm gonna consume because they're so easy to read and really great characters, but actually they're the same character. So I'm not a fan anymore. And I think the thing that this book taught me for this year, and I'm glad I learned this early, is that I need to start DNFing books. Like, life is too short to be reading books that you're not into. Like, if by the quarter mark I'm not feeling it, then I just need to learn to drop it. And so this book actually taught me a very valuable lesson, and I just need to learn to stop reading books. Like, the whole closure part of my brain that needs to, you know, end things that I start is gonna have to chill, because I just, oh my god, trying to get through this book was painful. It was not good. I think I gave it 2 stars. It was very meh. The The next book I read on my Kindle is called Consider Me. This is by Becca Mack, and this is a hockey romance, and I actually really did enjoy this one. I think for me this was kind of like off-campus series that was by Elle Kennedy. Those were really popular a couple of years ago, and hockey romances still seem to be quite popular, so I picked up Consider Me, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was a very quick read, and it reads a little bit more mature than the off-campus series, so I really liked it. It was about Oliver and Carter, and Carter's always been a kind of bad boy of hockey. He's never been serious about dating. He's never looked at girls in that way, and Oliver kind of changes everything for him. She's kind of the one girl that comes in and turns his world upside down. What I didn't like about it was that it felt a little bit too insta-love for me. For someone like Carter who has been set in his ways for so long, it seemed like he was so easy to convert over to being in love and wanting to drop everything and marriage and babies and all the things, and that part wasn't believable. So I wish they'd spent a little bit more time kind of getting him to see the other side and kind of slowly develop into that man. And the other thing I didn't like is you can definitely tell it's written by a woman, this male character. And listen, most romance books are written by females, and it's, you know, the idea of the perfect man, but in this one it was a little bit obnoxiously kind of obvious that it was written by a woman, because come on, what man is this understanding about all of her needs exactly when she needs them, exactly what she wants to hear? And it was just a little bit too on the nose. It needed a little bit more of that kind of authentic male perspective, and I just didn't think it did that well. And then the other thing I don't like is that the conflict in the third act was kind of made up. Like, it was all right. It was just very mediocre. It seemed like it was forced, and it didn't really go with the natural flow of the book. But for entertainment purposes, this book was really great. If you're looking for an easy hockey romance, then this is a good one to pick up, but nothing earth-shattering. And then, you guys, I picked up the next two books that were 5-star reads for me, and boy did I need it, because my month was off to a really rough start. And so I was like, okay, let me change directions. Let me stop with this romance kick. Just because it's February doesn't mean I need to just read romance. So I decided to go in a totally different direction, and I'm so glad I did. I decided to pick up a fantasy series. It's a trilogy. I only got to the first 2 books, but I am now starting the 3rd one, so you'll hear about that in March. But those books are The City of Brass and The Kingdom of Copper. So these two are by S.A. Chakraborty, and they are part of a trilogy. Like I said, these books are about a girl named Nahiri, which I am pretty confident I'm saying wrong, but now that's all I hear in my head, so Nahiri is what we're gonna have to go with. But it's about a girl named Nahiri, and she is in Cairo, and she's kind of like a petty thief on the streets, and she has these like healing abilities where she can kind of help people with minor cuts and burns and bruises and different ailments, and she has this like sense where she can sense what's wrong with people. But when she's doing an exorcism, she kind of accidentally summons a warrior that's from this magical city called Davabad, and when he realizes that she has these healing abilities, he's like, wait, you might actually be a part of the Nahids, which is a group of people from this magical city, Davabad. And so he's like, I want to take you to this place because that's where actually your people are from. And to Nahiri, that sounds so exciting, because she's been wanting to leave Cairo. She's been wanting to learn more about her history and just go on adventures. So she goes with him to this magical city, and from there you're just introduced to a world of magic and intrigue and so much political background and history. And when I tell you, the politics in this world are like chef's kiss. I tell you, so good. I haven't seen politics done like this in such a long time in none of the fantasy series that I've read recently, and you just get so swept up into this long-standing history with all these different groups of people and why they feel like, you know, they haven't been served justice, or why they should belong at the top and have the crown, and it's just all the things. And the other thing I loved about the book is that it had such a sensory overload in all the best ways. Like when she writes the descriptions of the souks and the bazaars and the spices and teas and all the food, and I just felt like I was transported there. And it takes a really talented author to write description like that but not be overwhelming and boring. Sometimes you can find fantasy series where the description lasts for like 10 pages and you're like, you're a talented author, but my goodness, am I bored? Whereas with S.A. Chakraborty, she has this way of writing descriptions just to give you enough and make you feel like you're there, but it's not overwhelming. And I loved the little bit of romance that was also in this book, and it's so action-packed, and I just loved it so much. Usually between fantasy reads, I need like some filler palette cleansing books in between, but with these, I just wanted to read them back to back to back. So that's where I am now. I'm on the 3rd book, which is called The Empire of Gold, and I can't wait to see how this trilogy ends. And I'm also a little bit sad because I don't want it to end, because that's how incredible it has been. So if these books have been anywhere on your radar to read, I need you to drop everything and get to them ASAP, because they are so worth it. And I'm kicking myself for not picking them up sooner, but at least now I can binge them and not have to wait for the next book to release. So if you needed some kind of nudge or a sign from the universe, this is your sign. Go read them now. So while I was in the middle of reading those 2 fantasy books, I decided that at night, right before bed, I would read on my Kindle and maybe read something a little bit lighter, while during the day I read my fantasy. So I decided to give Katharina Mora another chance. She came out with a book called Temporary Bride. This is the 2nd book in her Windsor series. Last month I read The Wrong Bride, which is the first book I'd read by her, and it blew me away. I loved it so much. It was a 5-star read. So I was like, okay, maybe this new series will have her heading in a different direction, and it'll keep up with the high expectations I had of the series. So I started reading it, and oh my goodness, it just like womp womp. It was not going in the direction that I wanted it to. Like I mentioned previously, she kind of writes the characters all the same, and all the brothers sound the same, all the female leads sound exactly the same, and I just wasn't vibing with it. So in the spirit of keeping true to what I said, which is that first book taught me that I need to learn to DNF, I actually had to DNF this, and I gave it up till 50%, which I think is a legitimate amount of time to give a book, and a good chance to give it to really, bring you into it and pique your interest. But like I said, life is too short, so I had to say bye to it, and I think I might be taking a break from this author because her works are just not doing it for me anymore. So yeah, this one was a DNF. And then the last book I picked up this month is a poetry book called The Love Poems of Roomie, and this is translated by Nader Khalil. And this book was my attempt at adding some different type of literature to my reading. So I'm one of those people that just likes my comforts, and I like reading what I like reading, but in the spirit of adding some new items to my repertoire this month, I thought I would add in some poetry. And yeah, like I said, I should just stick to my gut. It's not for me. I don't think, at least right now at this point in my life and my reading journey, I didn't think it was that like awe-inspiring, and like I don't think it had me like, shedding waterworks or anything. When I read books and I read some really great quotes and some really moving paragraphs, like those will bring me to tears, and I'll highlight them and I'll annotate them and I'll remember in the future. And sometimes quotes like that can read like poetry. So it's not that I don't think I can emotionally go there, but this collection in particular, I just didn't think had anything all that moving. So I don't know if I'm not the right audience for this, or I'm not in the right headspace, but the poems were kind of samey to me. It had the same like approach to what love is, and I think I was hoping that it would show love from a few different perspectives, or at least different types of love, but it all read kind of the same. So that's why I probably didn't enjoy it. But the reading experience was lovely from the aspect of how aesthetically pleasing this book is. The pages are really beautiful the way that they're designed, but it didn't do anything for any of the content, so I actually did not like it that much. I gave it like a 2.5, 3-star, but give it a chance if you're into poetry. Roomie is supposed to be one of the best, but I just don't think this is for me. So that's it, guys. Those are the 7-ish books that I read this month. Like I said, a very mediocre month. I too am very disappointed. I know this video wasn't probably that exciting to watch, but I hope it gave you some inspiration to pick up the Daevabad series, which is the highlight of this video and the highlight of my reading month. So incredible. I know that S.A. Chakrabarty also had a new release, which is called The Adventures of Amina Al-Safari. This is her new trilogy that she's released, and I can't wait to get to that. So if anything, I hope you got at least that much out of this video, and also maybe a couple of books that if you were thinking about reading, maybe you'll avoid if you didn't like the sound of them based on what I said. I'm really hoping March is going to be a better reading month. I have so many great books lined up, and I think I'm going to learn to trust my gut a little bit more and read the things that sound actually interesting to me, and not things that I think I should be reading or that might sound nice to read, and just stay true to what I actually want to be diving into. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.